Okay, welcome back to this latest episode of a conversation about design. I'm Amit Patel, the creative director, as you know, and I'm really looking forward to this latest episode. And I want to welcome Anneli Hansson to the podcast today. Anneli, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Amazing. Yeah, really good to have you here. Obviously, we met probably about 18 months ago. We've had
Mhm.
numerous conversations, LinkedIn chats, etc. And yeah, I'm just really looking forward to kind of hearing all about kind of your thoughts on where the creative industry is going, some of the challenges, what you think people can be doing to help overcome that. So yeah, really looking forward to this conversation. But first, to kind of just give everyone a better kind of understanding of who you are, can you give us a little bit of introduction about yourself?
Yes, I can. So I'm Anneli, not Emily, Anneli Hansson, and I'm based out of Stockholm, Sweden. And I'm a brand and marketing strategist. I'm
Mhm.
actually also a design strategist. It's just so many things to say. So why I bring this up is because I think I'm a little bit of a unicorn of kind of having one foot in each thing. So I have marketing strategy background, and then I worked with really big brands like Coca-Cola and Levi's and
Mhm.
Volvo and others with advertising and PR. And then I also have a branding background where I had my own branding studio working with brand strategy and brand identity design. And then after that, I studied design thinking and innovation because I felt it's so important to actually have a really good product, because otherwise I feel it's just like putting lipstick on a pig, and I don't want
Mhm.
to do that. So that's my background, like about 30 years in sales, marketing, and branding. And
Yeah.
now for the last 4 years, I've been focusing all my efforts of teaching and coaching uh, creatives. So a lot of different creatives and marketing people who want to level up and learn more about how to open the door to strategy and get paid for your thinking before
Yeah.
doing. So that's me.
Great. Thank you so much. So we're just going to dive straight into it.
Hmm.
The first question I have is obviously you've gone through pretty, extensive career, worked in lots of different areas, and then you made the switch to teaching.
Yeah.
What prompted you to think, okay, actually this is what I want to now do?
Mm. First of all, I think it just happened by accident a little bit
Hmm.
because I got this client who had money from the European Union, and they were going to teach a lot or train a lot of startups in Sweden with focus on sustainability.
Hmm.
So companies who want to do good for the world could apply to this program. And they had this 2 times a year, and it was for brand strategy and marketing strategy. So they hired me, and I did it for like 6 years to be that head teacher to teach this group. So it was a really like small, intimate group, more workshop style, that I helped guide them to how to build the foundation for their brands and businesses. So, and I found it so fun. I mean, I'm like, I love teaching. And
Yeah.
so that's how it started, but I still did client work. And then when COVID hit and the pandemic and everything, and I already been for a year in the Future Pro group to grow my business and to get like a more global network of people.
Hmm.
And then in like 2 weeks, I lost 70% of my clients. Like it just like, when the pandemic hit, everything just fell apart. And that's when I could give myself 6 months of actually like looking into, I'm getting closer to 50, like I think it was like 46. I'm like, what am I going to do the rest of my life?
Hmm.
I've been doing this for so long. Is this what I want to continue to do, or do I want to do something else? And that's where I realized now I want to teach and help people. I want to be the person who I wish I met when I was 25, 30, who could give you those like
Yeah.
insights and golden nuggets and be a little bit of both like kick in the butt
Yeah.
and a little nurturing mom at the same
Mhm.
time. I want to be that person. So that's how it started.
So I think that's a perfect question,
Mhm.
perfect point rather, to lead into my next question then. So looking at the people that you are teaching now, say the 25, 30, 35-year-old that's kind of going through this journey, what do you think some of the biggest challenges are that are facing them?
Mm. It's so interesting because I thought that was going to be the group I teach, and how people are like from 25 up to 60. So I
Hmm.
just realized everyone is on their own journey, and some people are late bloomers because they might have been incorporated and then they start their own business. So it's not so much about age, it's more about like where they're at in their entrepreneurial kind
Hmm.
of journey. But I think a lot of people right now struggle with trying to understand how AI will affect our
Hmm.
business. And I see a lot of opportunities here, and
Hmm.
I can feel there's a lot of fear out there because
Hmm.
you don't know really what will happen. And then people get a little bit like, this is not going to affect us.
Hmm.
But for me, that's saying a little bit like, I'm the horse and then the car is
Yeah.
coming. And I'm like, I will still be the horse and we will not need cars. And I don't think that's a good way of approaching it right now.
Hmm.
It's happening really fast, and it could be a really great opportunity. But you
Yeah.
need to have that mindset shift, and it's about to get there now. You
Okay.
can't
So
wait.
yeah, and again, I think that's another interesting area because I think for us at Experience House, we
Mm,
focus not it's almost like this context and adaptability, curiosity that's becoming more and more important, not just kind of these tools that are constantly kind of
mm,
were in our face. So do you think so the AI point completely agree.
mm.
And obviously this mindset shift to figure out kind of where you're going.
Yeah.
Do you think there are any like softer or essential skills, and you talked about mindset, that
Mm.
you feel are missing or need to be kind of, tuned a little bit more?
Yes, definitely. And I think this is where design thinking comes in, where I think a lot of marketing people and marketing departments have a lot to learn from designers and from design thinking. Because I think to understand how to understand customers,
Hmm.
really like how to do research, how to empathize, how to have deep interviews with people, how to study behavior. That is not
Hmm.
something you can ask ChatGPT about. Like, we need to
Hmm.
understand that it's like that's a language model too, and it has a
Hmm.
lot of bias and assumptions to. So to learn really about how to use empathy, for example, to understand people, I think that's extremely important. And to also know that being curious,
Hmm.
using imagination, all these things are very human skills,
Hmm.
could never be replaced by AI. So instead of thinking like we can get help and be more effective in other things, but those human skills, which is this people call soft skills,
Yeah.
are things that AI can never do. So I
Hmm.
think what I see is that there's been very focus on tech and tech
Hmm.
solutions for a long time. And then I see a lot of people who are not, they don't even know how to lead a client meeting. They don't know
Hmm.
how to lead a workshop. They are not trained in that because they don't get trained in that in school.
Hmm.
So to just like network with people, socializing, knowing how
Hmm.
to sell, knowing how to lead,
Yeah.
that's a skill that a lot of people need to have. You
Yeah.
need to be able to take a couple of steps, like a few steps back, see the bigger picture. If you want to work with people on a higher level, they are big picture thinkers.
Hmm.
So you need to be able to do that. So I think that's where a lot of people have a little challenges. Like, I'm good at what I'm doing, but I'm like pee my pants when I need to lead a meeting
Yeah.
with 10 people.
Yeah. And in terms of the people that you're tending to work with, are they coming all at the kind of the same level of, expertise? Are they
Mm,
are they in the same kind of professions, or are you teaching people from all different types of professions that are
yeah,
looking to kind of move into this? Just tell us a little bit more
yeah,
about, I'd love to understand who your audience is, and
yes,
then maybe we can kind of dig deeper into like patterns that you're
yeah.
seeing from the different groups.
I think it started out a lot with, because the way I started to teach too on a global market was that I was
Mm.
part of the Future Pro group from start. And really fast, I saw that people wanted to hear more about brand strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to teach in the group, and I had a subgroup within the Future Pro group. And then I started to facilitate and do things with Chris Doe and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
content with him. And so it kind of that audience of like creative entrepreneurs were really like, they became my audience too, very natural. But then I started to see a pattern that a lot of people who reach out to me are either younger people who have this already understanding that I want to I don't want to work in silos. I want to understand the bigger picture. And if I know how to open the door to strategy, then I could do strategy and execution. So they
Mm,
see that they can be 20. They just have that big picture seeing. They want to learn from me. I'm also very much of a practitioner and not an academic person. So they like that kind of hands on
yeah.
style that I have. And then it's another group, and that's a little bit more, very often designers.
Hmm.
They're over 40. They have a long career of 15, 20 years, are really skilled brand identity designers often.
Hmm.
And they feel like there's a missing part here that I didn't learn in school. I don't know anything about marketing. I don't know how to facilitate. I don't know
Mm,
strategy. So I actually could give so much more value if I learned
yeah.
how to do brand strategy before brand identity design.
Mm,
So they come to me for that. Like they want to open the door to strategy too, but they didn't have that background. So it took them a long time
yeah.
to get there. So
Yeah.
it's like two groups. So the designers are often a little bit older. The younger often have more marketing, UX, UI
Mm,
background. They have that in their education to see the bigger picture.
got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you had to give, say somebody approached you and they
Mm.
wanted to have a conversation around, your training, or like put aside the training,
Yeah.
just kind of career advice, and
Mm.
in terms of like what they could gain or what they should be focusing on, what would be like your kind of top tips for them to kind of go away? And because I think this would be fascinating for our audience.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that's okay. So special, this is like two different, and I would love to hear your opinion about this
Hmm.
too. I see two different options, and you never want to be in the middle of it. So
Hmm.
either you specialize really hard and you become like an expert in something that you do really, really well.
Yeah.
The only one who really benefits of being a generalist, and when I say a generalist, I don't mean like that you talk to everyone and don't have a niche. It's
Yeah.
not that. It's a generalist in skills.
Hmm.
The one who benefits of that is someone who's been like me on the client side in a really, really big corporate environment where you're a CMO, for example.
Mm.
You need to have the bigger picture because I worked with like 7 agencies at the same time. I need to have a conversation with an advertising agency, a digital agency,
Hmm.
strategy. There's so many different PR. I need to understand all of it
Hmm.
on a higher level, not tactic things, but on a higher level.
Yeah.
So if you want to be on that level inside of a company, then I think it's really good to have that bigger picture and learn
Yeah.
that. If you want to be a consultant, then it's really good to be an expert and super specialize
Mm.
because that's how you get the best work. Like if you want to
Yeah.
work with someone or being a consultant, that's what I see. Everything kind of in the middle is more
Yeah.
difficult.
I think I agree with that, because we see a lot of students coming through our programs who we will say to them, like, it's really important to have the foundational
Mhm.
general design grasp of the design process. You may not become the best UI designer or visual designer, but you will kind of know enough to be the generalist who can go and work with a startup, do some low fidelity designs,
Mhm.
work with creating concepts, etc. Now, obviously, the AI tools will help you rapidly prototype things, will help you kind of synthesize research a lot
Yeah.
quicker. So having a grasp of those tools as well as a journalist is I think very important as well. And I think over time, as you start to kind of mature as a
Yes.
designer, that's when the specialism can then start to kick in.
Yeah.
So that specialism could be in a specific industry,
Yes.
so healthcare, automotive,
Mm.
etc., or it could be within a specific part of the process. It could be purely user research, purely visual design,
Yes.
purely kind of whatever it is,
Yeah.
content. And I think that comes as you start to mature. And I think sometimes what I see as a challenge, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, is as you see people who are, like you said, that slightly older designer
Yeah.
who's kind of trying to figure out their career path, they're coming in with 20 years of experience, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're ready to specialize right away,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So there comes something where you're like, listen, you're going to have to make sure that you really understand the general skills, and then maybe you can then specialize also because you are mature as a designer. You're just not yet ready for this new sphere of work.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's totally right. And I forgot about to say that from start because I don't often work with very young people. So
Hmm.
I think the first year for everyone is just to explore and test different things. But
Yeah.
I'm thinking more about when you really want to like take your career to the next move, that if you want to work for the best agencies, you need to
Mm.
be specialized. If you want to have a consultant work for a corporate business and not go through like, because procurement and all this, when you look for agencies, is really difficult to get in as a
Mm.
small agency, for
Yeah.
example. So it could also be if you're really, really skilled at one specific thing, say, for example, some kind of research,
Mm.
that could be interesting to hire that person just as a consultant
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
or that person could even be hired by a brand strategist or a
Hmm.
branding studio or someone else because they're so good at doing that kind of research.
Mm.
So that's what I mean with specializing,
Yeah.
that it's really important to be, it's better to be really, really, really good at one thing than to
Yeah.
be like okay
Yeah.
at everything else. And that's a little bit like I think Christo was the one who told me one time, like, you don't want to be the buffet.
Mm.
Like, you want to be that like
Yeah.
premium offer, because who want to buy the buffet?
Yeah.
And also one thing that I want to add is that this is what I see most people do. And I think this depends because we have a little bit of insecurity when we're starting out
Mm.
offering our services, is that a lot of people have a tendency to move through startups and people just starting up who don't have so big budgets.
Mm.
But the problem with that is that they don't have big budgets. So
Mm.
it's, and they're more difficult to work with because they don't know what they need or want.
Mm.
So you need to be more experienced to guide them.
Yeah.
They also
Yeah.
have a lot of time, but they don't have any money. And that's the opposite of what you want to work with. You want to look for people, companies, who have a lot of money and no time. Because
Yeah.
even if they're perfect AI tools out there, they don't even have time to figure that out, but
Yeah.
they have money. So
Yeah.
then they can hire you to figure all things
Right.
out, and you can become the creative director, art director of all these
Yeah.
AI tools instead. So go for people who have less time and a lot of money, and that will
Yeah.
give you so much more joy, and it's easier to work with those companies too.
That's a really, really good yeah, good way of putting it, actually. The next thing I want to is
Mm.
digging deeper into this. It's a two-part question. So the
Mm-hmm.
first question I have is just going to the people that you are tending to work with. Do they tend to then create like one or two person kind of consultancies, or like small strategy setups, or just like one or two people, and they might bring in freelancers. But is that
Mm.
generally what they go off and do?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
I think, and this was not on purpose, but I
Mm.
think this just happened. And it might be because my marketing strategy background, that people who come to me often want to have some consultant business, maybe more than a big agency.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a consultant business where they lead with strategy first, and they might have a small team, often like a fluid team of people like they bring in when they need it. And that's how I run my business too. So it's
Yeah.
easy for me to help people
Yeah.
build that kind of business. You don't need to have a lot of employees and big overhead costs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can really be a
Yeah.
fluid agency. So that's the people often that comes to me. That's what I can see. So a lot of consultants and a lot of like small two,
Yeah.
three people business.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question then I have, and it might, I don't know, maybe it'll be a tough question.
Mm,
Do you think that model, which obviously is very, very popular,
mm,
and I see lots and lots of people doing it, and I completely agree, having the flexibility
mm,
helps tremendously. There's lots of great talent that you can go off and bring in when you need it.
mm.
Do you think that model will change or be impacted, say, 5 years from now?
Oh, it's really difficult to say. To be honest, Matt, I'm biased here. So at least when you are biased and have assumption, a good rule, which you do teach this. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of your listeners know this.
Yeah.
But the first step is to accept that you have bias and assumptions, because
Yeah.
everyone have, and then be aware of it. So I'm
Yeah.
aware of my own bias here. But I do think it's actually a really good thing to be a smaller, more fluid, because there's so many things happening in the world, and we have no idea. Like constantly every day things happen where we're like, oh my god, is this like a action movie, or is this really happening for real? I think what we know by now is that we can't even predict what will happen a year from now.
Hmm.
And we could never predict how fast AI is moving.
Yeah.
And it would just accelerate. So we don't know. But
Mm.
I do think that the bigger agencies, they're more like dinosaurs. Like they're really slow movers because they have a really big overhead cost
Mm.
and big fancy offices. And I don't think people want to pay for that anymore. I think we're like
Mm.
global citizens, and we feel like I can work with anyone all over the world. It doesn't matter if you live in Ghana or Philippines or India or Sweden or US. Like we're all the same. And if you
Mm.
have internet connection, you know your skills, you can also work with people all around the world. And I think that's where we're heading. Those
Yeah.
like fancy days of going to the agency, and
Yeah.
I don't believe in that anymore.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think obviously the world, the connectivity. I think one of the challenges I think that we'll probably not be able to get around is like just
Mm,
the time zones. And I would love to work with people obviously on a global scale, but time zones I think does mess things up a little bit. But that's I'm sure a lot of companies already figured that bit out,
yeah.
anyways. But um, I just think this flexibility and adaptability, it's going to be so
Mm,
important. Like you said, we don't know what's coming. We don't know what tools are coming up
mm,
6 months from now or a year from now, or how quickly things are going to advance. And I think I talked a lot last year about curiosity,
yeah.
especially with AI tools. And I
Yes.
think this year that continues to be the same, but adaptability becomes really important as well.
Hmm.
Being able to adapt and flex as
Yeah.
the world shifts, as tools shift, as economy shift, whatever it
Hmm.
is, like you have to be able to react. And I can, as we spoke about just before we started recording, like the way people are buying and
Yeah.
selling courses and workshops
Yeah.
and learning, that you have to be adaptable.
Yes.
And then things are gonna, we're in a
Mm,
very cyclical kind of environment where
mm.
sometimes we think this is going to slow down and something else
Yeah.
booms, and all of a sudden it switches, and then we just don't know. And yeah, it's a but that being able to kind of not fall into traps
Mm.
and put yourself down and realize that, hey, adaptability is going to be key here, and I just have to keep working through. We're living in a tough world, and that adaptability is, I think, is one of the most important things to just keep in mind.
Absolutely. And one thing that I forgot to say that now when you talked, I was like, that sparked the thing that I was thinking about, that curiosity.
Mm.
We often talk about identifying problems, so define the problem is really important, of course. But for a lot of people, they wait for a client to come to them and then they start their process, which is empathizing, of course, and then defining the problem is a really
Mm.
important start. But I want to start even before that. I want creative people to be much more leaders, to be curious in a way that you constantly are out there seeking problems that you see in the world
Mm.
that people have not yet noticed, because that's how you can get clients too. That's how I got a lot of my clients when I did service
Mm.
work, that I didn't wait for people to call me. I was like, I see a problem here. And that's why I think it's really good to know a little bit about different things. Where design thinking comes in a lot is because I always think, how can I design this in a better way so we
Yeah.
can nudge a behavior? And the client would probably not never come to me to say that. So I connect dots. I'm like, I saw an article or a post from this brand who talked about that they want people to, say, for a hamburger chain, for example,
Mm.
and they say they want people to buy less um, meat
Yeah.
burgers and more vegan choices, for example. So say that I see that constantly, and then I go to that place and I see their menu.
Mm.
And because I am the way I am and I'm super curious and I look for problems, then I'm like, why did they design the menu the way they do? Because they're actually not nudging my behavior to choose a vegan alternative.
Mm.
The three top things I can buy is red meat. So it's really weird to have that design of the menu and then talk about
Mm.
that this is your goal. That's how I connect dots and see problems. So then I reach out to them and say, hey, I notice you talk about this a lot. I saw this. What
Yeah.
about we do a project where I can actually help you to prototype a different solution for that? And
Yeah.
then we can make that behavior change. And then they will probably be like, oh, that's a great idea. They just
Mm.
didn't reach out to ask anyone to do it yet. That's how you can get before a lot of other agencies out there because they're slow and they're waiting for
Yeah.
clients to call them.
Yeah. That's super interesting. I think again, the fact that you're kind of using this in your own, you have used this in your own work, makes it so much easier to kind of convey that when you're teaching your own
Yeah.
programs as well, because you've got that real life kind of example there for you as well. Um, I want to ask you a question because I think it's important for people to understand and just to track kind of what you're doing and how you're
Mm.
working with people and kind of that mindset shift. Do you have a example or a case study of somebody that's come to you, where they were,
Yeah.
how you worked with them, and then kind of what that's led to for them in moving forward?
Yeah, I have several. I mean,
Yeah. Choose
one
one, and yeah,
one
yeah,
that I just
yeah,
talked to this morning. I'm so incredibly proud of her. I can
yeah.
say her name, it doesn't matter. Her name is Emily. She's in Sweden too. And when we started to work together, she was so shy. I mean,
Mm,
objectively, she's one of the best designers in Sweden, graphic
mhm,
designers. And she's working with really, really good brands. But I know she was also hiding at her office. She didn't want to go out and network. She didn't
mm,
want to produce content on social media because she didn't want to be seen.
mm.
And she was waiting for client to call her, and she had a little bit of a tough time, although she was working with these cool big brands. So fast forward today, I think it's about a year, 1 and a year later. She's on her way now to one of Sweden's most prestigious design schools where she's going to teach brand strategy.
Oh wow.
I mean, how cool is
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
I'm so proud. I'm like a proud
yeah,
mom.
yeah,
Like, because she's creating content now that is so great.
yeah,
She's getting clients leads from her content that she's
yeah,
writing. She's out there networking. She's doing public speaking. She's just talking to people. And she added brand strategy before her brand identity design. And now she calls herself a brand designer because she's still a designer
yeah.
at heart. She just added the strategic part. So proud of her, not just because her skills have been
Mm,
extremely like higher when it comes to strategy, but it's more about her personal journey and knowing that she's actually teaching this. It's something that I could be there teaching, and I'm more happy to see her do that.
yeah. We've got a couple of minutes left, but I think you've mentioned something that I really want to kind of dig into, because I think, again, for our audience, this is something that is becoming more and more uh, an important note to talk about.
Mm.
This getting yourself out there.
Yeah.
That's a great case study, great example that you just mentioned. Like, just had amazing work, great, but just wasn't getting herself
Mm.
out there, networking, putting her work out there to be seen, etc. First of all, I want to talk about, well, why do you think that is? And do you have any tips
Mm.
of what people can do to overcome that?
Okay, so I think it depends on personality types, and maybe that's why I'm always be so drawn to help designers. I don't know why, because people are like, why don't you just help marketing people only? Because those are the people who often take action right away in my courses. It's like
Mm,
actually a big difference. But they're more introverted, more shy in general. So I think that's a lot of about like it's not used to be in the spotlight
mm,
and putting yourself out there. I love being in the spotlight. So
mm.
for me it's like just give me a stage and a
Yeah,
mic. I'm
yeah,
happy,
yeah,
but that's not most people.
right.
So I think that's the thing. You need to see you need to find a way to do it where it feels comfortable for you. And this is why I
Very
think
good.
it's so
Yeah.
important to learn facilitation as the first part of when you learn strategy, because
Mm,
you're not the hero, you're not in the spotlight, the client is in the spotlight, and you're guiding them. And as a shy, introverted person, that feels much more comfortable. You actually knowing that you're guiding them towards a result. Instead, it's
yeah,
not about you, it's about them.
yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that's a mindset shift of, that you don't have to be that center of attention, like
Mm.
clown at the whiteboard, because it's not that about that. We can facilitate in a lot of different ways that fits your personality. So that's why I think that happens.
Mm.
And what was the follow-up question?
It's just any. I think what you mentioned. My second part of that
Mm.
question was any tips, and I think you
Mm.
mentioned facilitation. I think it's a great one, and I'm just thinking now, like actually that's probably something that we need to encourage more and more people to get comfortable with, or
Yes.
put them in situations where they have to do it,
Yes.
because that's going to unlock a bit of kind of confidence.
And when I say facilitation, and this is like good learning from my own
Mm.
teaching right now, is that I thought everyone knew what that was, but not, no, obviously not. So we're talking about leading client conversations, and that could happen in a one-on-one conversation with a
Mm.
client where you lead with questions and curiosity and finding out the problem and like current state, decide future state, where's the gaps, you're looking for gaps. That's how you facilitate. It could also be in a bigger setting where maybe you do a design sprint, or maybe
Yeah.
you do a workshop.
Mm.
But that's leading the conversation, leading the group, guiding. That's what I mean with facilitation. Just to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
clear
Yeah. Yeah.
about
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
And then other tips is also like, I think to see content, if you talk about like putting yourself out there, is a lot about creating content today. If people don't know that you exist, then you don't have a brand, and then
Mm.
no one can find you and no one can hire you. And that's
Mm.
sad. If you put in a lot of effort and in your skills, and you have the most beautiful portfolio and website and everything, and people can't find you. So I think to think about it a little bit as a design thinking process of, what about I think about it as I'm experimenting and prototyping things. So every time you create content,
Yeah.
you're like empathizing, looking like, what do people need? What do they seem to want? And what are their pain points? Like, how can I talk to them and not marketing myself, but instead solving one of their
Yeah.
problems? And then you define what problem you want to solve. And then you like kind of prototype, like, you have a concept, you have an idea that you want to do, and that's your post, for example.
Mm.
And then you post it and you evaluate and you test. So it's basically the design thinking method. Why not do that when it comes to your own marketing?
It's such an interesting topic. I think this is such an interesting point, because we see so many students going through and they don't yet understand the power of that, or the value rather of that. They create a portfolio and they sit behind a screen
Yeah.
and they expect everyone to come to them. But that marketing, the branding, and that, again, yeah, facilitation of those
Mhm.
conversations, I think, and obviously networking. There's so many other things that have to be have to be done, and I'm really glad that you kind of mentioned that the importance of that moving
And
forward as well.
I just want to add one thing about that. And
Mm.
this is an encouragement to everyone who listens. I know that you can feel sometimes like clients are a little bit scary because they could have a lot of experience of things that you don't have, like marketing, for example. But remember that you don't need to be an expert of all that. When you have a method of doing things, when you know how to do a sprint or you know how to
Mhm.
do a workshop, then you're the one guiding that process, and you can trust that the clients have the answers within themselves. If you ask really good questions and you do really good exercises, they have a lot of insights. And if you put the right people in the room from the
Mm.
company, they have different expertise. They're not you don't need to have all that expertise. You
Mm.
need to know your stuff and your method and leading the client, and they have those
Yeah.
answers. It's like in coaching. So I think a lot of people are afraid of stepping into this because they think that the client will be like, oh, so what am I going to do next? But you
Mm.
don't have to be the consultant giving all the answers. You're there to lead the process.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important because that could help you to realize they don't know how to do this. Most suit people who are a little bit older, they spend like
Yeah.
95% of their work sitting in totally worthless meetings that are
Mm.
super inefficient because they don't know how to lead meetings.
Mm.
That's what they do all day. So
Yeah.
you coming in can help them so much. So that's
Yeah.
like an empowerment to all you people out there. Even if you're 20, it doesn't matter. Years doesn't matter. What matters if you know how to guide a client.
Fascinating point to leave on. And yeah, look, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think you've left a lot of really useful points. I'm hopefully going to condense these down into some top 5 tips, and maybe we can kind of do a little shared carousel or
Yeah, I
something
would love
around it, because I
that.
think that would be really cool. With just to close off,
Mhm.
Anneli, where can people find out more about you? How can they connect with you? Just tell us a little bit more about how they can. I'm sure you've done lots of stuff online, so just
Yes.
tell us the relevant links if you can.
I think the easiest way to connect with me and where most people should hang out today is LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the
Yeah,
business people are today. So
yeah,
if you want to go in and start creating content and also not be everywhere, focus
mm,
on one place. And right now, that is LinkedIn for most people. So that's the easiest way. Anneli Hansson. And if you want to be on Instagram, where I also do a lot of carousels teaching, it's
yeah,
the Anneli Hansson. You will find me there. So, and just reach
perfect.
out. People think that I have like the only AI thing and automation I have is when I do courses and stuff, and I'm like
Yeah,
DM me this word because it would
yeah,
be more efficient to actually send people links and stuff. Otherwise, people think I have like an assistant answering my things, but I don't. They're like, oh, do I talk to you? I
yeah,
answer all my DMs and I have long conversations with people. I love talking to you. So please reach
yeah.
out to me and just say, what are your takeaway from this podcast?
Amazing.
Where you're at
Yeah,
right now. How can we help you?
yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for offering that up, and I'm sure a lot of people will take that up. We'll put the links into the notes when we
Mhm.
publish this out as well. Anneli, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really useful conversation. So many great tips. I think a lot of people will get true value of this. I know I have.
Mm.
I'm really always trying to push our marketing and my own personal kind of brand as much as I can. So I definitely have taken away a lot of this conversation this morning.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care, and we'll hopefully have you back on in a year, and we'll talk how things have changed, or
I
a
would love
workshop in
that. And
person.
maybe I even come
Yeah.
to London. It would be so
Yes,
fun to do some
we
collaboration
need to
somehow.
definitely find the right thing, and we will
Yeah,
do it for sure.
that would be
Yeah.
cool. Okay.
Okay.
Thank
All
you so
right.
much.
Take care.
Bye
Thank you.
bye.
Bye.